Good evening. I'd like to call the village board meeting for the Village of Cary for November 1st, 2022 to order with roll call, please.
Cavelli?
Here.
Weinhammer?
Here.
McAlpine?
Here.
Dudek?
Here.
Walrath?
Here.
Collier?
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. I'm not aware of anything. Jake's going to quick run over there for me. We have nobody signed in. Is there anybody here who'd like to address the village board for an unrelated issue? Okay, we'll go ahead and close open forum at 6:01. I have nothing on my mayor's report. Trustee reports. Trustee Collier had something.
Yeah, I give a shout out to the Cary Police Department for the out and about yesterday with the trick-or-treaters and stopping and handing out candy with kids. Nice to see. Thank you.
Community policing at its best,
Yes, it
right?
is.
Thank you. Anything else from any of the trustees? Yeah. Okay. Moving forward to regular business, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through E as shown on the village's website and is displayed on the video monitor during the village board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Weinhammer?
Yes.
Dudek?
Yes.
Collier?
Yes.
Walrath?
Yes.
McAlpine?
Yes.
Cavelli?
Yes.
Thank you. Items for separate action. I will entertain a motion to approve an ordinance granting approval of a comprehensive land use map amendment, zoning map amendment, and planned development for the School Street Apartments PUD.
So moved.
Second.
Brian?
Skipped an item on the agenda.
Pardon me?
I skipped item A under separate action.
Oh, I did. The warrant. I sure did. I apologize. We'll scratch that. Let's go back. I will entertain a motion to approve a waiver of certain application requirements for the planned development application related to the development of the 106 through 124 East Main Street property. Apologize for that.
So moved.
Second.
Brian?
For the board's consideration this evening is a waiver request related to the development of the previously or currently owned village-owned parcel at the corner of Main Street and 2nd Street. The developer is seeking to move forward with the project contemplated for the property, which requires PUD approval under our zoning regulations for the B3R district. He's seeking to submit for a zoning petition that would be reviewed possibly later this year by the zoning board. He's seeking a waiver of 4 items under the requirements for planned development application, which are summarized on the slide, but essentially include a request to waive the requirements for a traffic study, excuse me, economic analysis study, villages services demand analysis, and off-site utility plan. The petitioner's looking to go forward with scheduling the open house for inviting neighbors to view the plans before going through the zoning process. And otherwise, the other plans that are requested from the PUD ordinance would also be provided as part of that petition. The vote this evening is not on the project itself, but is specifically on whether to grant these application waivers to go through the zoning process. Petitioner's here to answer any questions you may have as well, but I'm happy to answer any questions or maybe regarding the project also.
Thank you, Brian. Any trustees have any questions for the developer? I think we've talked about this a lot. I think it's a great project. Definitely enhance our entryway. No other questions there? Roll call, please.
Collier?
Yes.
Walrath?
Yes.
McAlpine?
Yes.
Cavelli?
Yes.
Dudek?
Yes.
Weinhammer?
Yes.
Now to item B. I will entertain a motion to approve an ordinance granting approval of a comprehensive planned land use map amendment, zoning map amendment, and planned development for the School Street Apartments PUD.
So moved.
Second.
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. As mentioned, the request this evening is for a proposed redevelopment project for the property located at 441 West Main Street. Just seeking 3 approvals for a map amendment, plan development, and also a comp plan amendment for the subject project. Little overview of the property. It's owned R2 single-family residential currently. It does have a significant history related to the existing senior center building, which is on the property, which was originally constructed back in 1888 and had various ownership and additions done to it over the last 130 years or so. In late last year, the Park District pulled out their senior center and programming from the facility, and the village distributed an RFP related to the project, seeking potential redevelopment efforts for the facility. The village has entered into or is entering into an agreement with one developer for that property, which is the subject of the requested actions this evening. And for the project, developers seeking approval of a map amendment to rezone the site from the existing R2 single-family zoning classification to the R3 multifamily zoning classification, with the proposed change from a public use from the senior center to a multifamily project. Would also require an amendment to the village's future land use map, excuse me, and the comprehensive plan to change it from public, semi-public to multifamily, consistent with the proposed zoning. And then related to that would be the plan development approvals for the project itself, specifically with the zoning departures as requested. This slide summarizes the existing comprehensive plan designation versus the proposed multifamily designation. And there is various guidance within the comprehensive plan looking for areas that the village can encourage additional multifamily housing within the community. Specifically, there's guidance on page 28 of the comprehensive plan that looks for additional housing to be added to the community in locations that could be considered for proximity and to pedestrian access to community facilities and amenities such as the downtown area and other goods and services. Likewise, the village's downtown strategic plan does give additional guidance as far as trying to increase the housing supply in and around the downtown and different types of housing type near the downtown core. So staff believes and the zoning board recommended that the proposed amendment conforms to planning guidance that's been adopted by the Village of Cary. Secondly, the map amendment, again, is to rezone the property from R2 to R3. The proposed zoning would be consistent with other apartment and townhome developments within the Village of Cary that are similarly zoned R3 multifamily. There are, as you can see on the map, on the image, there are other R3 projects which are in close proximity to the property, with the Carriage Hills Townhome development just near the downtown area and the southwest side of downtown, and then various apartment complexes that are along Route 14. And other projects that are in the village, other apartment complexes along First Street as well, all have similar zoning classifications. With any map amendment that's proposed, there are various standards that are identified within the Unified Development Ordinance that would need to be met for the proposed change in zoning classification, which are summarized on the slide. Based off the review at the zoning board meeting on October 13th, the zoning board believed that the standards were met for this case and recommended approval of that zoning change. For the proposed plan development, as the board is aware, the Chapter 7 of the Unified Development Ordinance provides guidance for plan developments that is a feature that's intended to provide more flexibility within the code and creativity for design for projects that can provide more efficient use of land use, somewhat preserve natural features or buildings, and promote more long-term planning consistent with the village's guidance in the village's comprehensive plan. So the petitioner, as part of the redevelopment for the property, is seeking approval of a PUD that would provide for the adaptive reuse of the existing senior center building. Would convert the building into 4 apartment units, and then would also construct 2 new 3-story apartment units for a total of 10 units on the property. In addition, the petitioner would be proposing to add 3 accessory garage structures that would serve each of the 10 units in the property with additional surface parking as well to provide for the future residents of the facility. Within the proposed project, there are various departures that are being requested as part of, excuse me, as far as the project from the strict regulations of the village code. The first is density increase. The maximum for the R3 district is a maximum of 9 units per acre. The proposed density on the subject site would be increased to 12 units per acre. And the table on the right-hand side shows how that density compares to other projects within the village, including ones that have been recently approved, including the Harbor Point PUD, which is a similar density as the proposed project. Second departure that is being requested is an increase in the building height for the district. Under code, the R3 district maximum height is 30 feet as measured to the midpoint of a roof. The existing senior center building currently exceeds that requirement. It's at 36 and a half feet roughly in height. So the proposed departure would be to solidify or bring into compliance that existing condition through various relief from the approvals for the project. The 2 new 3-story buildings would be measured at 34 feet in height, again to their midpoint, so they would comply with the proposed 36 and a half feet. The garages, as measured to the peak of the roof, would be 14 and a half feet. Third departure that's being requested is for the separation between 2 residential structures. Per code, the minimum distance between the side walls of 2 separate residential dwellings needs to be at least 15 feet. Due to various constraints on the property with the location of the existing building and the addition of the 2 new structures and the drive aisle, there's not enough land width to create a full 15-foot separation between the 2 structures. So the petitioner is requesting a reduction in that separation from 15 feet down to roughly 10 feet. The final departures that are being requested are for the building setback. Within the R3 district, the minimum setback is 30 feet for a structure. However, if the structure exceeds a height of 30 feet, there is a transitional setback calculation that would account for taller structures within the district. So any height that a building exceeds the maximum height within the district, so if it's 1 foot above the 30-foot level, it would require additional 2-foot setback for that property line. So in the case of the School Street frontage for this project, they're proposing a 31-foot setback, while the code would have required a 38-foot setback along that property line for the northwest corner of the northernmost 3-unit building. Similarly, along the south property line, petitioner is proposing to meet the code minimum requirement of 15 feet. However, with the height of that structure exceeding the 30 feet, the required setback would be 23 feet. During discussions at the zoning board level, the petitioner is still looking at options to potentially move the buildings further back from School Street to try and maximize that setback. However, the relief that's requested is still the 31 feet as shown in the plan. This slide summarizes the standards which are in the Unified Development Ordinance for the consideration of a planned development. Generally, the village can consider factors such as the impact on other property in the area, impact on public facilities, archaeological, historical, or cultural impact, parking and traffic that a project would produce, performance and appearance, and among other features. Similarly, with any departures that are requested, there are various standards that are identified within the Unified Development Ordinance that would allow for the village board to grant relief as part of a project that looks at the overall integrated design of a project, location of buildings, functional and mechanical features, and overall landscaping, conservation, visual enhancement, among other features. During the public hearing on October 13th, the ZPA considered the request during that meeting, and after reviewing the documents that were presented and also the testimony that was provided during that hearing, the ZPA recommended by a vote of 5 to 1 approval of the 3 motions shown on the slide, which include the approval of the amendment to the comprehensive plan, approval of map amendment to rezone the property, and approval of the schoolhouse apartments plan development for the subject site. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the project, but the petitioner is also here, can provide additional information as well.
Thank you, Brian. Great review. The board have any questions for Brian, or the petitioner is here?
I just had one question. The garages, inside them, are they going to have petitions so that each resident has their own garage space? Like, do you know what I mean?
Like separate garage doors and stuff.
Nick,
No,
did
they
you
do
want to
have
come up
separate
and
garage
address
doors,
that?
I mean internally. Is it going to just be open completely on the inside, or?
No, each unit, each garage space will have its own garage door, and there will be a partition wall on the inside.
On the inside.
separating each space from each other.
Nice.
Typically, we also outfit them with like a keypad that has a unique code. So there's maybe 2 or 3 doors, but each has its own, garage door opener has its own keypad code and their remote control. So they will each have their own individual spaces.
Thanks.
This is Nick from the developer, just for the record.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me tonight.
Hey, Brian, with the setback off of School Street at 31 feet right now, where, I don't have a huge problem with it, but where would they try to squeeze space from? Open space?
Yeah, so
Gazebo?
to meet a larger setback, the buildings would have to be shifted further to the east or the right on the slide.
The gazebo's marked at 14 feet. How wide is the piece of property in between there approximately? 30?
Yeah, between the parking space and the back of the building.
Yeah.
Just measure, yeah, you probably have 30
Probably
feet
about-
of
It
space.
matters. How much
30
more
some.
space do we need from the 31 that it's at now?
So the relief that's proposed, what was recommended for approval is the 31 feet.
Okay.
So if it's approved as it presented, it would be at the existing setback shown here at 31 feet. They're looking at potentially making some modifications to it to increase that if they can, without further impacting the open space too much.
Was the board's desire, because I know that when we talked about this before, there was an interest in preserving some of that green space in the back. Would the board prefer that, if this project would be approved, that we try to keep it around 31 feet to maximize that green space in the back?
I would much prefer to have the green
Yeah.
space. I mean, because the only reason we're looking to go further to over 30 is just simply because of the height. If it was at a different height, we'd be at 30 to begin with. So we're really past what normally would be
Right.
a
Correct.
requirement. I mean, I just, my quick comments are, number one, I think it's really prudent that, that we mention again that we're repurposing a building that has a lot of historic value to our community. So I am absolutely thrilled that we're able to do that you guys are coming in and doing that. You guys have done a great job with past projects that we've all seen pictures of or have gone by. And I appreciate the fact that I think originally you guys had gone with 3 additional buildings. You've knocked it down to 2. I just think that this will conform very nicely, blend right in, and be a very nice project.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'll just say, I think I'd prefer the setback a little bit further, only because then when you're driving on School Street, you're not so on top of the buildings, so that's just my opinion, if it can go back further.
Well, I believe they're going to try.
Right, I know that was a question that was just asked, so.
So I have a comment. So one of the things we're looking to approve is the reduction in the distance between the 2 buildings off of School Streets, right? It's a 50% reduction to what our code says, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. To me, I'm trying to visualize 2 32-foot buildings 10 feet away from each other. That seems really close. Is there a way to take the southernmost building and, grab 5 feet going to the south with it to just change the footprint of that building?
So shifting it further to the southern property line?
Right, so you
Yeah.
can have more distance between those 2. I'm not so concerned about the setback off of School Street. What I am concerned about is 10 feet, it seems like you can hand, a pot to your neighbor and say, my stove's not working, can you cook this for me? That's awful close.
Yeah, and that would be, if you shifted the property line further, the building further to the south,
Right.
that would again affect the relief that's required for that southern property line. So there's a setback existing, or that's proposed there of 15.25 feet, which code would require 23 feet along the property line.
But
is
I
it-
guess my point would, yeah, I get where you're going. I would just rather have the change in the zone and the ordinance on the south building as opposed to between the two. So to me, I would rather have the 15 feet in between and move the south building. Because we're gonna have, you're gonna have something on the south building to begin with, right?
Yeah, well, I think what we're worrying about too is the distance between the existing property owner. The developer has promised them substantial landscaping to buffer their development from the existing neighbors. Is that something that you're able to do? I'm gonna throw it out to you, Brian. Can we flip that in between the buildings? You're still within that range, but can we go to the 10-foot on the 7-foot and then having the 15 feet in between the two buildings, or maybe split the difference?
Certainly, it's part of the approvals for the project, so if that's an item that's being reviewed this evening, if that's a will of the board to make the modifications and the approvals and conditions for approval, we certainly can have that part of the motion this evening.
Are there any other residential areas in town that have 10 feet between the structures? I'm thinking of some of the higher density projects that we have throughout the town.
Yeah, some projects, some zoning districts, we've modified the setbacks between the side yards. So like the R2 district, makes an example for single-family homes. I believe our code requires a minimum setback of 5 feet for the side yard. So it is potential that you could have two homes setback 5 feet from the property line, the shared property line, which would create that 10-foot separation between the two structures.
Would the reduction of the 15 feet at the southernmost part of the property, would that inhibit any type of berming or any type of landscaping that the developer's proposing to screen their development from the existing property?
There's a buffer requirement along the southern property line, which I believe is, the code would be a minimum yard width of 8 feet. There's landscaping that's required to be installed within that, so that setback could be potentially reduced and still maintain that buffer yard that's required by code.
Is that something that everybody would?
Well, yeah, we got the garages. I know it's different for accessory buildings, 8 foot, but you got a side yard on the east side that's already only 8 foot. So pull the southernmost building to the 8 foot, create the distance in between.
I think it just looks better
Yeah,
if they're
I
separated.
agree.
That's
10
all.
feet
And
is-
I understand that. My only hesitation is that the property owners that are abutting to it, because that was their complaint, is they wanted as much space as that, am I
Correct.
recalling that
Correct.
correctly?
Yeah.
They wanted as much space between the building and them. So I'm trying to think of people that are currently living there and, hey, can we, how do we do this? I know 10 feet isn't a whole lot of space. I know in Palatine, boy, right now they have, I think they're 6 feet apart. They're just, literally, you can hand something across. And those are properties that sold for like $450. I mean, they're right downtown Palatine. So I know that there are things like that happening. I will go with whatever the majority of the board is on this. That's just my hesitation with regards to accommodating concerns that we've had, feedback that we've had from some of the neighbors.
I think that point is well taken, because during the open house, there was feedback about wanting to have some screening from the neighbor, whether that be berming, landscaping, trees, shrubs. And so certainly if we do pinch that, just want to understand, make sure the board understands that will restrict and somewhat limit the landscaping that you can have on the south side.
But isn't the accessory garage already eliminated that at 8 foot?
It's a much smaller
There's-
structure. It's one story.
Right.
It's tucked on the corner.
Yeah, there's different setback requirements for an accessory structure as there would be for a primary structure, which the apartment building would be. One potential compromise for that, the concerns of the board would be if you have 25 feet of space to work with, and maybe that distance gets separated evenly between the separation between the buildings and then the setback. So you have the building setback 12 feet from the property line, and you also have about 12 feet of separation between those two buildings.
asked a different way. The building adjacent to it, the northern building, is that a sidewalk that's next to it?
There's a, you can't see it in this slide, there, oops.
Because I see that
In the-
looks like it's 5 feet.
In the, yeah, in the, there's a, in the rear of the structure in the northeast corner, kind of just south, just next to the arrow, that you see the sidewalk ends at that point. So the sidewalk doesn't go all the way out to School Street at that location. It provides access to the rear of those two buildings. There's a landscape area that would be adjacent to the buildings in the drive aisle, so you'd have about 5 feet of landscaping that would be installed in the north side of the building.
I'm talking about, I think we're talking about a different one though, Brian. I'm talking about the one that is on top of the 3-unit building, the north building. That 5-foot strip, is that a sidewalk?
That's landscaping.
I didn't know what this was, that's what I'm asking. And then this is so it's landscaping against the building that butts up to the driveway.
And then there's a carriage walk that begins kind of just below that arrow that goes back towards the garages.
Who's got the cursor? Courtney?
Corner.
Do you, just so everyone knows what Trustee Dudek and I are talking about, that's the end of the sidewalk there. Yeah, and then it goes back. And then if you go to the left, then Courtney, so that is all then landscaping, that 5-foot area.
No, go ahead.
So my question was, has there been discussion of instead of making it 2 separate buildings, just one building and putting them together so there isn't that space there? So there's 6 units in the building, 1 door.
We did discuss that with the developer, and their desire was to do the 2 buildings.
Okay.
I've got a handful of thoughts, Mayor.
I was just going to open it up to everybody else and see if we can come to a compromise.
No, I've made myself known in the past of us theorizing of we need to tell the businesses coming to town what they should do. And these are people who do this, and they redevelop property, and this is their suggestion. They're asking for our permission to alleviate some of our rules or alter some of our rules. That's where we come in. If I'm standing on this property and I'm seeing 10 feet between the 4-unit building and the 4-unit garage, I'm seeing 10 feet between the 2 3-car structures, I'm seeing 8-foot setbacks on the east side, and I'm seeing a lot smaller spaces, I don't feel like a person coming onto that property is going to notice if we make it 10.25 feet or 15 feet between the 2 buildings. It is going to be something that is a little bit different for the neighborhood, but if you were to show an aerial photograph going just 2 properties east, there are 2 properties that have been here for a long, long time that are very, very close together, speaking of handing something through a window. So what is being proposed is within the character of the neighborhood. It does fit what's already there. It's just a little bit different type of building that's already there. So I would be of an opinion to ask if it's a potential to for the developer to do this without causing issues. But as Trustee McAlpine said, I would most definitely lean towards the southern neighbor, and they have had specific conversations with the developer, saying we want to make sure X, Y, and Z happens, and if we take away 50% of the property from the line to this building because we feel like we want to just move it somewhere else, then that is putting them in an awkward position of not being able to deliver on what they said they were going to do. So by no means do I want to just be a blank check for folks who bring stuff to town, but there's been a lot of thought on this property. There's been a lot of back and forth. We've had lots of conversations. I like the suggestions that staff has made on what we would approve and the changes we would allow to our ordinance for this particular development, and I don't see any need to alter what's presented here.
Well, one of the key things that we have to consider is that the developer, during the open house, Jake, myself, and the developer were there with probably about 15, 20 of the neighbors, and that was a big concern of theirs, is the buffering of the southernmost part of the property. Because right now, how it is set up, that they would be the most impacted by these 2 new buildings that were there. So I would concede to the fact that this is something that, I mean, it's evident that we don't have any residents here, and we had told them this is the direction that we were going to go, and the fact that we were kind of given the inclination that that's the direction that we were going, the documents have been made public, that they see what's going on. And I think that we have to be good neighbors, to say, look, you know, we listened to what you were gonna do. They were concerned that we weren't going to, and then to make a switch at the last minute when, you know, 15 feet is a decent amount, and you have to allow for a lot of separation with the landscaping. So I, you know, originally thought if we pinched it, we split the difference, it might be different, but this is a multifamily parcel now. So the people that will be moving there are gonna expect to have buildings a little bit closer than they normally would. But that's why I had asked the question before. We do have residential neighborhoods that do have 10 feet separation between the two buildings because of the 5 foot setback. So I tend to agree with Trustee Walworth and Trustee McAlpine when it comes to, we committed to the neighbors, and I think that we have to keep our word when it comes to that.
To be clear, I didn't say no.
Yeah, well, I know, but
asked
I'm
the
just,
question.
well, I just
wanna
wanted to make sure that,
clear.
I see myself going through the meeting that we went to, and they were very adamant about the separation between the southernmost part of the property, and on any other case, that's important. That was a very important piece of this, and the fact that they're not here shows that they're trusting us to move forward with what we've committed to in the past.
I mean, equally important to that is if you give them the 15 feet, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but if you give them the 15 feet and you put up, you know, 20 1-foot tall shrubs, that hasn't done you any good either. So what's part of the package, the landscaping package, to me is equally important to the distance between the buildings.
I agree. And did you want to touch base about the landscaping that you're planning on adding there?
Yeah, we're fully prepared to follow all the code requirements regarding having full shade trees, foundation shrubs, any kind of berming and a fence if necessary. Really whatever is required to make that comfortable and to achieve that screening on the south line is we're fully prepared to do.
Any other thoughts? Trustee Whitehammer, anything? Okay, roll call, please.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Collier,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
Weinhammer,
Yes.
Cavelli.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations. We're thrilled about this project. I think I could speak on behalf of the board. I think it's really important that you're going to be preserving a historical piece of our architecture in the village. And we're thrilled that you're investing in us. This is going to be probably over a $2 million project from what we've been talking about, and it's going to enhance the property values. And what more importantly is it's satisfying a desperately needed need that we have in the village for this type of housing. So thank you for committing to us, and thank you for choosing the Village Carrier. We look forward to it.
Thank you
Tell your
for,
dad thanks, and
Thank
hope he gets back from his trip safe.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for your consideration. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm on C.
That sounds good.
I'm going to go to C. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the purchase and sale agreement with Cary School in Maine LLC for village-owned property at 441 West Main Street in the amount of $100,000, subject to final review by the village attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks. Jake, did you want to touch base on this, please?
Mayor, Village Board, this is the next step in the process here for the project that you just approved. This is a purchase and sale agreement with True North Properties, or with their, I should say, their LLC, Cary School in Maine LLC, and the purchase price, as the mayor said, is for $100,000. So we're recommending approval of this item.
I think we've talked about this before, so we'll go right to roll call, please.
Cavelli,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
Weinhammer,
Yes.
Collier,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Walrath.
Yes.
Thank you. Finally, I will entertain a motion to approve an ordinance granting a conditional use for a car wash facility for the property located at 3130 Three Oaks Road.
So moved.
Second.
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor, Village Board. The request this evening is for a proposed car wash facility at 3130 Three Oaks Road. It's a vacant site just to the west of the AutoZone property on Three Oaks Road. They're seeking a conditional use for the proposed facility to be located within the B2 General Business District. Little history on the property. It was annexed into the village back in 2003 as part of the Westlake development. That project included about 51 acres of residential development, which D.R. Horton is currently completing that project, and then 4.5 acres of commercial work planned for and designed along the Three Oaks Road frontage. This site is the last piece of that commercial development. The existing Westlake Shopping Center and the AutoZone property were the other two facilities that were constructed as part of the overall PUD. The proposal this evening is for a 5,000 square foot building to be constructed. As designed, it will not have direct access to Three Oaks Road from the subject parcel. Under the approvals for the Westlake development, there was a restriction on future access points directly to Three Oaks Road for the commercial property in the front of that development. So the access to the site would be provided for through cross-access agreements with adjacent properties and to Westlake Drive as well. The village has provided some guidance. The petitioner is still having some additional conversations with the adjacent shopping center, which is located to the west of the property, the Cary Commons Center, just for general knowledge. With that entrance that currently is near that intersection, we're looking at potentially relocating that further away from the intersection to potentially increase the traffic safety at the intersection of Three Oaks Road and 14. However, that's not been finalized at this point, so the plan, as you see here, would be presented, but there is a potential that that curb cut could move further to the east to provide more direct access to this property with still cross-access connections with all the other properties in that area as well. The plans as shown do provide for queuing for over 30 vehicles on the subject property. That includes the queuing at the pay station area, plus additional queuing between the pay station and the entrance to the facility. There would also be parking on site for an additional 23 vehicles as well. There would be landscaping that's provided to provide screening from adjacent land uses, the existing residential homes that are to the north, and also the frontage along Three Oaks Road would provide additional landscaping as well. Under the proposal, the proposed project meets the bulk requirements for the zoning district, including building setbacks and lot coverage requirements. So there's no additional relief that's required as part of the project other than the conditional use permit for operation within this district. As part of their submittals, the petitioner did provide a noise study which demonstrates the potential impacts there would be from the proposed dryers in the facility and the noise at certain distances as you were to leave the exit of that facility. As you can see on the model readings, which are on the left-hand side of the slide, reading 4, you have roughly 44 decibels, 30 feet from the exit of the drive-through area. The nearest residence, as you can see in the image on the right, is over 300 feet away, so they would be limited impacts to any neighboring residential units in the area. Proposed building elevations are shown on this slide. The building will utilize various stone and brick materials for its main facades, the east and west elevations. And the south elevation, which faces Three Oaks Road, will incorporate more metal elements, which is more of the theme for the brand for the Driven Car Wash. They would have a more retro look to the building, but will still meet the design requirements within the village's Unified Development Ordinance. The images that are on the right provide renderings of similar facilities, not the exact replica of what's proposed at this location, but gives an idea of what the building would look like when constructed. As with any condition items that require approval within the Unified Development Ordinance, there are various standards that need to be met for a conditional use, which are summarized on this slide. And based on the public hearing October 13th and the information that was provided during that hearing, the ZPA considered those standards and based off a review of the documents that were submitted and also the testimony provided at the hearing, recommended approval of the conditional use for the car wash facility by a vote of 5-1. I'll be happy to answer questions the board may have regarding the petition. The petitioners are present here as well to answer any additional questions.
Any questions from the board?
Don't we have a car wash like right next door?
Two different types of businesses. One's full service, this one's
Okay.
self-serve.
Thank you.
I asked that same question when we had the development meeting. They don't consider themselves competing against each other. Anything else? Thank you, Brian. Roll call, please, Courtney.
Weinhammer,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Collier,
Yes.
Cavelli.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome to the Village of Cary. We look forward to it. Moving forward to the administrator's report, Jake.
Mayor, nothing this evening?
Okay. Department head reports, Chief Finland.
We had the drug take-back event on Saturday, October 29th. During that event, we collected approximately 60 pounds of unwanted medication, and we transported 206 pounds of unwanted medication to the DEA for disposal, and that's in a 6-month period.
Director Morimoto.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an advisory note here. Consistent with our operational plan for Alfresco Alley and Spring Street, Village Crews did reopen the roadway to traffic and remove the tables. So we had a great season out there for 2022, and we'll look forward to setting up again in the spring of 23.
Thank you. Director Simmons, anything else?
Nothing additional. Thank
Enough for you today, huh?
you. Yeah, I'm good.
Thank you. Any future agenda items and discussion by the village board?
Service announcement.
Just that this week is the last week for yard waste for Flood Brothers. It's the last week to put out.
Thank you. Any future agenda items?
Just a quick question. I know Courtney can't answer this, but just for example, like we have 20 bags to put out this week and there's still leaves that are falling. So are they, in the past, they have extended it based upon, you know, how many, the season and how many leaves are still on trees and stuff like that? Is that something that we can ask them to extend?
We can look into that.
Okay.
Usually the date is based on just when the facilities will actually take the yard waste too. So it really depends on them more than Flood Brothers themselves.
We could check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no future agenda items in discussion by the village board. I will entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 6:42.
Hey, what'd I tell you? 6:45.